The downside to large data sets is that you can fall into a confirmation bias problem. A good example of this that outside of crypto is Nokia. So years ago, Nokia had millions and millions of data points that said Nokia phones are best because of A, B, and C. And there was a researcher in China at the time who found back in 2007 or whenever the iPhone launch was, the initial iPhone launch, that people in China were spending something like 2 to 4 weeks of their salary just to get a hold of this phone, right? And so this is the primary difference between what this person giving the speech called big data versus thick data. In other words, what's really high value data.
Getting all around my room, my world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
There we go.
How you doing, fellas?
Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. It's good to finally connect.
Yeah, my name is Amrit. We're here from blockbuilds, and this is 10K, our boy.
It's so good to finally get to talk to you. I mean, we've literally talked since April 2023, I think, on and off on Twitter. But loved capswan, minted mine. So happy to have you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's great to be here. Always happy to talk. I don't really know what the structure for this is, but I'm excited to hear. And it seems like this is kind of new for you guys, right? Like this is pretty recent. You started this up?
Yeah. This is episode 2, actually. So you're the second iteration. So we messed up the first one. No, we didn't mess it up. But this one was you were the second guest. So welcome.
Thanks, man. It's good to be here. So tell me, before we jump into capswan stuff, tell me a little more about what you guys are doing. My understanding is it's kind of like an indexing service of dApps. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So we started Block because a few months back, couple months back, we're just talking about coming up with new apps. You're like, oh, we should build this in Web3. We should build this in Web3. But again, the problem is like the app discoverability in crypto is really bad. And what ends up happening is like people just like end up building the same stuff over and over again. And then because of that, the amount of innovation happening in crypto in today's world is very little. So what happens is like they basically abandon the projects because like people just build their own stuff. The previous stuff doesn't get used, and a lot of stuff is happening. But if you really want innovation, you should be building on top of other stuff. And it's not necessary for you to know the name of the app, but just say like you want this functionality, this is what you want the app to do. You should be able to easily search for that. And the problem with like services like Google is like, they like, it's just Binance, Coinbase, those are the first services. Sometimes there are new projects, really cool projects that don't get indexed on services like Google. So that's why we started building blockbuilds, where you can go in, discover any new dApp that you have on any chain, really, just based on the functionality and what you need. And yeah, that's basically the gist of what we have going on. But now we have our Blockcast, which is like, we got to bring on co-founders to discuss about their products and just talk to them, see what they're building.
Yeah, I love it. That's awesome.
We just wanted to, it's a problem that we had, right? We wanted to have something where we could just search for something, like a swap. We know a couple of swaps that we usually use, but there's no sort of one central place where you can go and find 10 swaps or something and then pick one to use, right? No one's built a reputation around Web3 apps. So that's one of the reasons why. It was to solve one of our own problems that we faced.
Yeah, that's interesting. Parallel.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's an interesting parallel because I think discoverability is really at the core of what capswan does too, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about the motivation, but at a high level, what we're doing with the Swan score and what we're going to be launching with the cap score in the next year is centered on trying to separate signal from noise, right? And it sounds like you guys are doing something similar so that, like you mentioned, you can build on existing software, bring the best of the best together and not rely so heavily on just what pops up in Google, right? And I think that a lot of things end up becoming kind of a race to zero in terms of liquidity. So it's either you build great tech with, no marketing whatsoever. That doesn't matter. If you build mediocre tech, if you launch a meme coin that has no utility, but it has liquidity and people can extract value, then that drives to the top. So there's sort of this imbalance. I mean, this is true for any business, but I think it's triply true in crypto. There's this imbalance between the incentive versus innovation scale, right? And the incentive scale gets way weighted down and people, go nuts for that. and the innovation scale tends to block and repeat itself. I think that's part of the reason you see this sort of stale infrastructure meta, where we went from Bitcoin to Ethereum, and then we started having a bunch of Ethereum clones. Now, I'm a Solana fan, so obviously I'm grateful that people continue to iterate. But having said that, I think there's a point where you're just reinventing over and over again. So like you guys said in the beginning, it's important to be able to use existing tech, so you're not just recreating for the sake of recreation, you know?
That's actually a perfect segue to talk about capswan. Like how did you initially come up with this idea? What were you thinking? What was going on in your head? When was this?
It's a good question. So back in 2017, I was visiting my brother, and I started working on, while I was there, he works for a FANG company. And at the time, it was kind of an impromptu visit. He hadn't taken time off. So during the day, I was just stuck at in his apartment, basically hanging out, playing video games. And I decided to build a little sample app called Serve. And the purpose of this was to solve a problem that I experienced in philanthropy, which is that there's a lot of embezzlement, and not just in non-traditional ways, right? And so I was trying to figure out, how do you solve this problem? And eventually came up with this idea of a Serve score, right? And then he and I started arguing about this. And he basically said, you could never get a company to, donate or their information, right? And I understood where he was coming from. In other words, if you're a bad actor, why would you give up more information about your business? And if you're a good actor, why would you go out of your way to be accountable to some third party? That just adds overhead, right? And so, and obviously he supports what I'm doing. He's an investor in my company. I'm grateful for that. And so this isn't like a, like a blood war or anything, but this argument really became the foundation for capswan. And so what ended up happening was, I got into building kind of this accountability bot, right? So you could track predictions. We hired our first developer, our lead dev. He does a great job. And since then, we've started to figure out a lot of sort of Sybil vectors that people can attack. And we aren't a platform that you can extract liquidity from. We're adding some monetization and different things so that people can make money. But we're not a traditional crypto coin launch. So you can't just like play the capswan game, get in, get out, make a bunch of money, right? So we haven't attracted the MEV Grug types to come in and write bots to scrape and automate and do all those things. And so we're kind of taking this, our foundation was a much more Web 2 approach. But the benefit of that, and I think that this is what you're getting at in terms of when we talk about innovation versus incentive, is that we are building on, I think, some foundational principles that Web 3 has kind of moved past, which is make sure things work and something isn't dead on arrival before you ship something that's going to vacuum up millions of dollars that could potentially leave founders or constituents in the dust, right? You don't want to screw over the people who are supporting your project. So we've taken the opposite approach. We've raised, by crypto standards, very meager amount. And we've kept our staff very small so that we can continue to build and iterate for a much longer period of time. And that's where we eventually came to not just this Swan score, but realizing, hey, this isn't sufficient. We need to move into things like cap scores. So we can start looking at metadata and different things and start to solve that signal noise disintermediation problem in a much more robust way. So what you're doing with blockbuilds is exactly, you guys are taking a different approach and there's different methodology, but the core of it is you have all these products and you're trying to figure out, where should I put my time and my money? And I think in the bear market, that's a more pressing question than ever, right?
Absolutely, yeah. But we spoke about this. I think I remember chatting with you on Twitter about this. Yeah, we were talking about like groupthink, how sort of like groupthink works, and like how like you were trying to build like this swan score to sort of like give a voice to like individual traders and small traders. Could you double click on what exactly swan score is and how you're implementing this?
Sure. Yeah. So I think high level, real quick, if you think of an atomic prediction or trade, right? Like the way that I think about it is, so a person makes a call. You think Bitcoin's going to go up. After that call, they make a decision. Am I going to enter into this trade? Then they make derivative decisions. When am I going to enter? Now, afternoon, next month, whenever. How much money am I going to allocate towards this? How long am I going to stay? Is that based purely on market condition, or is my individual financial situation a part of that consideration? For most people, the answer to that is yes. Very, very few people, as much as Twitter makes it seem like it's everywhere, are completely price agnostic, right? And so when I looked at this, we started with the smallest, most atomic unit, which is someone making a prediction. Now, the difficulty here is if you just go in and scrape, which is what most companies do, they take sentiment analysis. So they take a really broad swath of information, they kind of shotgun across all the sources. The value there is that you get a large data set. The downside to large data sets is that you can fall into a confirmation bias problem. A good example of this that outside of crypto is Nokia. So years ago, Nokia had millions and millions of data points that said Nokia phones are best because of A, B, and C. And there was a researcher in China at the time who found back in 2007 or whenever the iPhone launch was, the initial iPhone launch, that people in China were spending something like 2 to 4 weeks of their salary just to get a hold of this phone, right? And so this is the primary difference between what this person giving the speech called big data versus thick data. In other words, what's really high value data. And so that's what capswan wants to tap into. We aren't looking to be the end all be all of big data, right? We're really looking to help provide people like you and me who have other responsibilities, a way to look at the market without having to spend 4 to 8 hours a day scrolling charts, checking into Twitter, Telegram, et cetera. And so that's the foundation, is this idea of looking at atomic calls, giving them a score. Now, the next question I usually get at this point is, how does that scoring mechanism work? That's something we actually want to open source, but the broad spectrum is we use ATR. So basically, we look at a combination of price volatility for the individual asset. We look at the duration of the prediction. So a quick example would be, if I said Bitcoin is going up $10,000 by tomorrow, that's a very different prediction than Bitcoin's going up $10,000 by the end of 2025. And the Swan score will reflect that. So one of the interesting ways you can actually use a Swan score is you can kind of determine how difficult, quote unquote, or how big a prediction is based on how large the Swan score is. So it's an interesting metric in that sense, that even if you aren't bought into the ecosystem, you can look at it and use it in that way. Now, that's for atomic calls, right? In other words, that is the foundation. But what we're building to is separating signal from noise. And we want to apply that to, people keep using the word social fi, so we've been embracing that. But capswan's been here since 2019, before all the Wall Street bets blow up, and now Friendtech and all these other platforms that people love. And so what we're doing is taking advantage of this kind of core principle of atomic calls and scaling that up to what we're eventually going to call our cap score. This is going to look at metadata for each account and say, hey, these type of people work really well in these environments. And I think that this is important for two reasons. The obvious reason that people jump to is, hey, we want to get rid of LARPs, right? You have all these paid group leaders, and it's a problem because if you have a large following, you can extract value. And there are people in the space like Loma, for example, who I think, have done a great job, made a ton of money in the space, very high integrity, haven't sold out in that sense. But that's rare, right? What we usually see are other people, which I won't name, that have large followings and look to extract maximum value from their users, right, by making these calls. And so the problem there is, well, how do you balance that? That's one problem. The secondary problem to balance is there are people like Loma that I mentioned, or a bunch of my friends, David Holt, or any of these people who are full-time professional traders. When you look at how they did on a series of calls, if they win 30 to 40% of the time, right, they may be super successful. But the perception on Twitter is, if you made a call that was wrong about asset XYZ, there probably is a real ticker XYZ. I just mean a broad asset, whatever, if you were wrong about a Bitcoin call, then the problem is, everyone jumps on you. It doesn't matter how well you're doing, right? And so we have to balance that. For the people who are doing well, doing their best to share alpha, they're just trying to, get back to the community in a way that they think is appropriate, right? We should allow those people to separate themselves. In other words, elevate that signal while getting rid of the noise of people who are really impressive, great marketers, and get people to pay, hundreds or thousands of dollars for a course, right? I have a friend who spent a lot of money. I won't say the number, but a lot of money to get calls that have been consistently wrong. So the worst part of this is when you buy into these paid groups, not only do you lose your money up front, but then you actually are paying to lose money, which is like the worst of both worlds, right? So we're trying to make it so that people who are doing well in the space get elevated, and people who are preying on other people basically get silenced or pushed to the side, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the reason why they coined the phrase "shit coins," right? This was happening a lot with that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Like the whole reason is accountability. How like I see like so many people, even like sometimes these influencers, they would make a call, and all these people who don't know anything about crypto, they would just go buy in on those calls and lose all their money. And this is part of the reason why like crypto has like received a bad name, because like people are losing all their money just because these influencers who are there, who are putting out that they know everything about the crypto space, are putting out these calls, and people are just buying in for no reason, even if like they have no accountability, no backups, they don't even know, no logic behind their calls. So I really love that idea of like you going and checking, hey, is this person even good at what they're saying? Do they even know what they're saying? So I love that idea of what you just said. I think we really need that in the space today, because there's so many people out there just talking. It's all talk, but ensuring that this talk is backed by quality, that's really important.
Agreed.
And you also have like a group of active users now, right? There's a bunch of traders that are actually super active on capswan. Are you also building a community around that, or do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we still have a small user base. I mean, by crypto standards, maybe not by bear market crypto standards, but we have a small user base by bull market crypto standards for sure. And what I think one thing that differentiates our platform is, depending on the type of trader you are or the type of calls that you're making, if you come in and make a call every once in a while, that's a good thing, right? So if we have someone who comes back, let's say every week, and they're making these calls, that's fantastic. What we're trying to do at capswan, because our platform up until this point has really served people who are trying to track their own calls, produce content, et cetera, is we're now transitioning from content production to content consumption. So we have some features rolling out, new homepage with a bunch of features I'll talk about on Twitter later, that are going to make it more consumer friendly, right? So we're trying to make capswan a better place. And given the stance that we don't have a coin, we do have an NFT, which is tied into a bunch of features, but we don't actually launch a coin and have no plans to. I live in United States, so I would get sued up the wazoo. So no, I don't want Gary Gensler knocking on my door, right? And so the bottom line here is that we aren't competing with a lot of these existing SocialFi platforms. So I think that puts us in a unique space that we can provide services not only to users, but potentially to other SocialFi players, right? And what we've done over the last, it's been 4 years now, which is crazy, is we've built this prediction and NLP engine. So a lot of the AI hype that you've seen over the years, we actually had to jump on that pretty early so that we could build this bot. And so now we're able to, cultivate that. The biggest thing that I'm, as a founder, trying to balance is, especially as you go for the different meetings, talking to VCs and that sort of thing, is trying to balance that crypto versus AI, right? People love buzzwords. And so I'm trying to, maintain authenticity and be realistic about expectations and not just like promise everyone the moon. But the bottom line is that we built a solid tech foundation. And now, to your question about community, now we actually provide features that I think allows communities to integrate SocialFi in a way that's non-invasive, that doesn't require you to allocate capital. In other words, you could install the capswan bot, start making calls, polls, do all these things directly inside your Discord group, inside your Telegram group. You can do this from the web yourself. You can do this on Twitter directly. We've been slowed down because of the API rate limits, which is obnoxious, but otherwise, we support Chrome. We have an Android client, et cetera. So we've been making a lot of strides to try to get people to be able to use capswan for free wherever they are, right? So that's the biggest push that we're making from a community perspective, is trying to make this easily accessible. And adding content, like I mentioned at the beginning, is an important part of that. So it's basically two sides of the same coin. Make capswan easier to use and make the content that people want to see more readily available so they come back more often, right?
Dude, honestly, like the amount of features that you guys have added in like the short amount of time with such less number of devs is insane, especially the Twitter feature. Like I could just like tag the capswan bar and like list anything, like even track other people's predictions, which is quite a powerful feature if you think about it like that.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah,
with you.
and I really like the design decision, because totally you could have just made this a website where people come in and they have to like make the content on the website itself. But the fact that you chose that, hey, people can make content Telegram, people can make content on Twitter, it just opens up the space to like a lot more content being aggregated on the platform, which is like a really good design decision. So I want to ask, like, what made you go that route? Like, what made you think that we should go and spread that out to like Twitter, Discord, Telegram, instead of just having a website where people come in to produce this content?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that question sort of segues us into a broader design principle at capswan, which is that I hate vendor lock-in. I think that anyone who's, if you've ever signed up for a newspaper subscription that you've had trouble getting out of, right? This is a prime example. You also dislike vendor lock-in, but maybe for different reasons. So for us, we've built everything in a sort of cloud agnostic way. So generally people will build their tech stack on things like Amazon or Google or whatever, and they tie in a lot of their core features into those specific clouds. So our first step in being vendor agnostic was saying, hey, we don't want to rely on any of those things. We want our environment to be fungible. We want to be able to move from A to B to C, right? So we embraced a technology called Kubernetes that I won't bore anyone with, but it just made it possible for us to move in that direction. Shout out Kube first for all the work that they're doing over there. And when we moved then from this sort of foundational vendor agnostic approach, then we started pushing or doubling down on the social clients, right? So the idea there is we want to be readily available to all people. For example, right now, because I use Twitter and capswan every day. So for me, it's, I experience just as many, if not more, of the bugs and frustrations that our users have up front every day. And so one example of a frustration that I want to solve, and that kind of attacks what I'm talking about with this sort of globally available platform, is I want to make it so you can click share a tweet and then tag a mobile app directly from your little iOS or Android context menu. And that will automatically save that as a prediction or as something that you're watching, right? And so things like that, we need to continue to erase the barrier from thought to execution. And the more that we do that, I think capswan will continue to become more and more the obvious choice for this sort of thing. And given that our entire platform is free, we're going to be open sourcing our swan score algo at some point. That's the plan. And we're going to be launching this new cap score algo so that we can better differentiate between signal and noise on an account level. It gives people the ability to use capswan without getting locked in, and use it in a way that they care about. The biggest thing that we're trying to push for now, when you brought up groups, are things like chat and some basic features, just because it seems to be what people really want. So there's a bunch of work we have to do. But to your point, I think that, I'm grateful we've been able to add so much in such a short period of time. And it really speaks to like the quality of our team and our lead dev, who's done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, I think this is great actually, because like first, people already trust the platforms that they use, and plus you're reducing the friction to like aggregate the content you're aggregating on Capswan. But the chatbot thing you mentioned is, there's a saying that the opinion of the many is better than the opinion of the one, and since you're already aggregating so many opinions of the people on your platform, I think integrating that with like the chat feature, I think that would be the next level into like taking this forward on capswan. I really see that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we actually today, and we've had this for over a year now, we have a group feature. So basically, if you make a prediction and you tag, let's say you do capswan, see us predict Bitcoin will go up 100% in, by end of next year, right? You make a prediction. You can tag something like group and whatever your group alias is. Let's say it's blockbuilds. And now everyone who's in that group can actually see all the predictions that you made. And when we launched this feature initially, it was only available on Twitter, obviously. Then we rolled it out to Discord, Telegram, and all these. And so now you can tag this across social clients. And the nice thing here is that people can do some social aggregation without having to keep up with all of the different notifications. Because I'm sure you're like me, where you're in 100 Discords and 100 Telegrams, and it's like no one can keep track of all that. And so they're, even from putting aside the traditional signal versus noise problem of like what information is valuable, there's a secondary problem, which is we all have too many things that we're paying attention to, and we need to limit the amount of things that we have to pay attention to while still extracting useful information. And so that's kind of a primary focus, is like, how do we respect our users' time, right? And that's what we're doing with these types of features.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's such a cool idea, especially because like this is a lesson out for like all the builders in Web3. One thing that I've noticed with your idea is how user friendly you've tried to make it, right? You could just tweet and then it gets added. And that's such a rare thing. There's so many like wallets in Web3, but like the one wallet that I really liked was Hey Wallet. Do you guys remember that? Like
No, tell me about it.
it's like a Solana wallet, so you could just like tag people. I could say on Twitter, like, hey wallet, can you send like 5 Sol to at alechp or something? It would directly go to your wallet, and it was like so user friendly. And this kind of is so rare to see in like Web3, because everything is like a new thing that people have to learn, and it's like it's so hard to onboard new users. But like having a feature like that where you could just tweet and from any platform, and the information gets aggregated in one place without you having to worry, that I think a lot more people should sort of double down on that and try to build features like that.
Does that worry? I mean, partially this is good user feedback, but also I'm just curious in general. Does that worry you at all, tying socials to a wallet like that?
Not really, because I can actually have like multiple wallets. But if I were to optimize for something as a Web2 user for 10 years compared to Web3 user for 2 years, I'd rather sort of like go for something that's easier to do, you know? So yeah, like no, especially if it's also about reputation, right? Like if I make a bad trade, I'd like people to know that like this is where I messed up, right? It's essentially what Swan Score is. I think that's what you were trying to highlight, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think that, our our approach with this is to try to give people the ability to integrate what they want without being this like massive vacuum suck. So for example, if you try to use our poll feature, you can create a poll on capswan on the web or mobile app, and from there you can actually publish it. So you can either copy relevant poll ID over to Discord or Telegram, or we actually have a feature where you can click publish to Twitter, and that'll pop up an OAuth window, right? However, if you don't like OAuth, and some people don't because it gives an application the ability to post, you could just write CS poll and write your poll directly from Twitter. And so what we've done is take like even our sign up. I think this is a good example. We just added OAuth for convenience because of what you said, right? One of our product manager basically said, hey, it's annoying that I have to do CS sign up to handle this thing, especially now with the recent API rate limits on Twitter. There's a 3-minute lag time. Telegram, Discord, web app, there's all that's instantaneous, but because of the recent API changes, we basically pull requests every 3 minutes. So now imagine you're a new user on capswan, you run CS sign up, like you're just sitting there waiting for a code, and you don't know, maybe something failed. Maybe you're not just waiting, maybe something failed on our end, right? Or maybe something failed on Twitter's end and the message didn't get dispatched. That's happened to multiple users where they'll send me a screenshot and you'll see a little red exclamation mark and they're like, I don't know why capswan's not working. And I'm like, well, Twitter actually didn't send that message, so we never got it, right? You can see in the screenshot. And other times we mess up, right? And one of our services goes down or whatever, and it's down for a minute. And then in that time, the message is gone, right? And we didn't parse it properly for whatever reason. So in that case, when we're looking at all these types of problems, we're trying to optimize for max convenience while giving people who are super concerned about SecOps the ability to, not basically control their environment. We don't want them to worry about capswan vacuuming up a bunch of credentials. So for example, we never store, actually 2 good highlights here. When you go to publish a poll, it'll ask you every time to reauthorize OAuth, right? The feature redundancy that I mentioned with CS signup, sending a message versus using the OAuth flow is another example. Another example is for our NFT users, people who've minted. If you go into the wallet settings, you'll notice that it basically logs you out. We don't store, address or anything like that. So you have to reconnect. The thing that we end up storing for the user is a cached image. So if you've already connected your wallet and you have your Swan that you minted, you can still see that, because otherwise you have to manually reconnect every time you want to update your Swan profile badge or anything like that. So that's where we try to balance that convenience versus privacy concerns, because crypto at its core, cryptography is supposed to be very privacy sensitive. And I see, this is why I asked you the question. I think that we're starting to see sort of a schism as crypto becomes more mainstream. I think you're right. There's going to be a lot more, desire for convenience. And my goal as Capswan's founder is just to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that crypto's origin is for, the people who are just much smarter than me about SecOps, who spend all their days thinking about pen testing and, different Linux distributions, things like that. So that we're trying to make sure that we are where the people want us to be. And balancing that in crypto, I think, is a unique challenge. And it's a lot of fun,
Like it looks like almost all the design decisions that you made with capswan, it kind of comes from like your moral standing, right? Like all the things that you're like really prioritizing kind of speak to like where you stand with respect to a lot of these things, which is really good to see as well. Because I think it was Balaji Srinivasan who said, like, if you are sort of a founder in Web3, you also got to like approach it from like a moral leadership point of view when you're building something, which is kind of rare to see in like the Web2 world.
Yeah, I think that that's probably true for all leadership. I agree with you. I think that, but I also think at the end of the day, people don't give a shit about what I think or believe. If you notice like the difference in like Capswan's tweets versus my tweets, no one wants to hear me, tweet about Naruto. I mean, I have a few friends, Ace and
hey, you're wrong about that. I love your Naruto tweets.
Thanks, bro. But point is that, Capswan users should not have to care about what I think. So we try to make Capswan almost boring in that sense. That's part of the reason we may lean into it more over time, but it's one of the reasons that we've stayed away from the stereotypical Web3 crypto memes or, and dunking on people and all these, because it's like, at the end of the day, we just want Capswan to be a platform that people enjoy using. It does the function you expect, and that's it. And as far as like design decisions, I really see that as just like simple pro con, like trade-off. And for us, we're trying to capture a large swath of users. And that means it's important for us to not piss off people in crypto. And people in crypto tend to care about privacy. And that may not be true for new wave of crypto users, but we want to make sure that we don't dissuade the OGs that have been here for several years, right?
Yeah.
That's very, one thing like with capswan, it's like you're mentioning how you're going for like existing users in the crypto space. But I think this could also be a really good service for onboarding new users, because onboarding is a big problem. People don't want to lose money. They just want to learn how to trade crypto. So in terms of like onboarding, I think capswan is also very huge on that front. So have you ever like thought about like taking it more towards new crypto users? Who are you exactly like targeting?
Talk me through more of your idea, and then I'll tell you if it lines up. Are you thinking like crypto trading? I mean, sorry, not crypto trading, like crypto academy type onboarding platform where it's like, here's how you use
no. I mean, more like when like people have money, they just want to invest in a crypto coin. They want to do like day trading with crypto. They want to make some money off of crypto, but in the end, like they're not confident themselves in like making those calls. So this platform, like if they're just starting out to trade with trading in crypto or anything, they could essentially use capswan as their like starting point where they can essentially track their skills in terms of trading and basically improve themselves before they actually go in and invest a lot of money without knowing anything, without having any knowledge of the first principles of trading.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm on the same page with you. And yes, I agree. I think one way to think about it is like, so you have paper trading on one end. It's so hard. This window is so small. So it's like, I'm trying to.
Let me fix that for you. Let me try.
Okay. Thanks, man. Okay. Thanks, man. So the crypto, on one end you have, paper trading over here. And then on the other end, you have actual trading, right? And so the problem is that if you are paper trading, you can kind of like throw things up in the air. It's like, I got $100,000 to start. I blow my paper account. Doesn't matter. I generate a new one on TradingView or whatever I'm using, right? And on the other end, you're like, oh man, I got to trade. And every new trader, I think, runs into this. I had a buddy who recently quit his job and went full-time as a trader. And the one thing that him and I kept talking about over and over again was like, you should never lose more than a steak dinner unless you have a system. Like if you don't have a systematic trading approach and you're just like, degenning on the 1 min and, hey, I made 10 grand doing some degenerate things, that doesn't necessarily, like, more often than not, that does not scale, right? And so the biggest thing here, I think, is like, well, what is the middle ground between these two extremes of like trading and paper trading? And for us, for capswan, I mean, now everyone's calling it social fi, but we really thought, hey, people can stake social capital. In other words, like, I'm putting my name on this thing, and I may be wrong. That's okay. I'm not going to be wrong on all my calls, but I'm certainly going to be wrong on a sizable number, maybe the majority of my calls, right? That is yet to be seen. And so I think the biggest thing here is like, if we are helping users to fill that gap, then we've done our job, right? And so that's kind of, I would say, if you take out the glitz and glam of like all the other features we built and back testing and all these different things, at the end of the day, I started building this because I was being mentored by David Holt. One of the reasons I brought him up originally, he's a friend in the space. We used to have calls every Monday, and I would ask him every dumb trading question you can imagine. And we'd spend an hour every Monday night going through my PDF of dumb questions. Him and Peter, Trading Peter, used to make fun of me for it because I had such long docs of like all these dumb questions. And so I think you're right, like, especially getting into the space, there's a huge problem with imposter syndrome, right? And especially when you're trying to stake capital, and then you get into the arena, and now you're throwing, not arena branded, the broad metaphysical arena. And now you're throwing money and you're like, man, I want to care about this thing, but it's $100, it's $1,000. How do I care about this little money, right? Whatever little means for a person, maybe it's $1, I don't know, right? And so whatever that minimal point of caring is, there's a problem where you're like, crap, I don't care if this wins or loses. I got to stake more capital for me to care about the trade. Then once you do, now you're stuck. Now you're antsy and I hope this wins. And you start thinking in terms of what I call bucket thinking. And it's like, oh man, if this thing hits and I 10X this $1,000 into 10 grand, man, that could pay for da-da-da. I could put a down payment on a new Honda or something, right? And so once you get into that mindset of, when I make this trade, I could buy this thing. It's sort of like, if I win the lottery, I would give this money to my family. I would donate this money to my church or philanthropic group or whatever, right? And so the problem, I think, with that sort of thinking is it's sort of, it primes people to fail. On one hand, it's a great motivator, right? It gets people to really, really pay attention. But on the other end, it's not sustainable. And as I say, easy come, easy go. So what we're trying to do is help provide people a platform where they can sort of consistently chip away without having to spend all their time. And you see this, I know for a fact 10K, because you and I have talked so much, Amber, I'm sure you have too, though. People get into the space and they spend 12 to 24 months and then they just get burnt out because, you can only stare at screens and trade shitcoins for so long before you're like, man, where's the exit? So the question I kept asking was, how could I chip away at something, spend an hour a day doing this thing and make progress consistently over 10, 20, 30 years? Instead of me spending, 4 to 12 hours a day being a degenerate and then afterwards, like hoping that I can accrue generational wealth so that I can retire me and my grandchildren and blah, 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 right? So that's, I think, the perspective difference. Like, if you think about it, the core, take away all the design decisions. I'm like, to me, time is sacred. So that's the one thing that I'm trying to optimize for with all of these design decisions.
I agree. And like, I started in Web3, I think I started trading NFTs. I used to be an NFT trader. I started in 2020. And like, NFT trading is also just kind of like, if you day trade NFTs, at least during the bull run, it burns you out really bad. Because like at one point, like they're just like going up really fast. But next moment, it's just like all the way down. So I think like that's really valuable. Like you're doing that. It's just like, it helps with accountability, but it also helps with like maintaining your own composure in terms of like trading, in terms of like long-term investing. So that's really awesome to hear.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's that difference in like, how do you prime someone to be multi-cycle, right? So for example, David Holt versus Gainsey. So Gainsey, he doesn't as much anymore, but has talked a lot about how he prefers bull markets. A lot of people do. And David Holt has talked a lot about how he prefers bear markets. Now, I don't know what their current perspective is as of today. I'm just referencing past tweets where they've gone back and forth on this. But the point that I'm making here is that people have very different perspective. And I think part of that is, what was your first market exposure that you won in? I think that's part of it. But my takeaway from this is not bull or bear is better. There's more value add in bull, so there's more value to extract, or I'm better at scalping in the bear, so that's a better market. It's not that. It's that if you have more at bats, you're more likely to win, right? It's just that simple. So the millionaire next door mindset and trying to help people achieve, not that legal disclaimer, not that capswan is promising anyone makes money using our platform or any other, this is not. But our goal, if we do our job well, we give people the tools to help them make better decisions so they can continue to be in the arena, so to speak, for a longer period of time and extract more consistent value over a longer period than 12 to 24 months generational wealth, right?
That's so good to hear, by the way. On a lighter note, tell us about your obsession with Naruto.
Oh man.
You know what? Like, I gotta be honest here. I like your Naruto posts better than your capswan tweets. Like, I love capswan as a product, but when it comes to following
I
you,
love it.
just know that I follow you for your shit posts and not capswan tweets.
It's funny because years ago I was talking to a friend who actually got me into crypto in the first place, and I remember we were walking one day and we had a meeting with a group, and I told him I'm going to ship post my way into the hearts and homes of millions of people. And so it's funny to hear you say that. But the reason I like Naruto is I think a lot of, like some guys think about Rome. I think that's the common meme nowadays. I think about Konoha and the Leaf Village and, Cycle of Hatred and all those things, which are, I think, brushed over in the concept of like cartoons throwing energy balls at each other, right? Like that's kind of, it's easy to miss. But I do think there's a lot of depth to the show, and it's lighthearted enough that you can talk to anyone about it. And more often than not, like no one wants to hear another person preach at them, right? So for me, I get to kind of express some deeper values that I have, some things that I'm thinking about, but I get to contextualize it in this really lighthearted thing that a bunch of people have seen an episode of or many episodes of, and they go, I get the concept, even if they don't care about whatever my sort of philosophical leaning is while I'm making that tweet. So it's mostly, I think, for me, just to be able to like express ideas that I care about. But for people reading it, I know they don't really want to see some heavy, boring thing. So it's a give and take in that situation.
That's also something that's misunderstood a lot about anime, right? It's much deeper than what people think it is. They just think it's cartoons, but if you literally pay a little more attention to it, then they're talking about archetypes and a lot more on there.
Yeah, I think it's good to make fun of it too, though, right? I think people do, including myself, take it too seriously sometimes. So it's good to have a balance there,
Absolutely. I also noticed like one of your tweets, you were like super early on Bitcoin. I saw you were tweeting about Bitcoin in 2016. So tell us about how you got into like this space to begin with.
Yeah, so the friend that I mentioned, I started working at this incubator. So I'd left previous company in education, and I got into, I was kind of starting out fresh, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I was building this digital learning management platform. And we ended up getting about 40 schools interested. But for a variety of reasons, it just wasn't a good market fit. So I ended up closing the project down. However, while I was there, ran into my friend Kagan, and he basically was like, hey, I care a lot about this Ethereum thing. And then he introduced me to a friend of his who cared a lot about Bitcoin. And before you know it, I was having lunches with them, and they were talking to me about these coins, and I just thought it was interesting, right? Because the first time I had ever heard of Bitcoin was 2012. And I just remember my grandpa, we were hearing it over the radio, and Bitcoin had hit, I don't remember the price. Let's say it's $800 or something, but it hit some relative local high, whatever it was back then. And at the time, my grandpa basically was like, well, you can't have, so this dual, the government's role is to manage money. How are they going to blah, 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 legal, all these sort of things. So that was the perspective that I had, because I gave it zero thought. My grandpa's smarter than I am, so I just defer to him, right? And then in 2016, now here are these like smart, passionate people who are really in the market telling me, no, this is a big thing. And I started paying attention to it. And back then, I think that profit maximalism has kind of taken over the space. People tend to be much more interested in value extraction. And for people got families to feed, I got no problem with that. I think that, you got to do what makes sense to each person. But I will say that like tech focus, the sort of crypto punk, or cypherpunk, enthusiasm from 2016 was much more visceral than it is now. Now it's like, here's a coin. First question, is it a scam? Second question, if it's not a scam, when does it rug? right? Third question, after all, like, will I make money at all or will I break even? And then finally, at the very end, does it do anything cool or interesting that I might care about, right? So utility has been pushed so far down the ladder for most people, and for understandable reasons, that we're taking a very like sort of contrarian approach in that sense of like, hey, we want to build things that add value, and we're not trying to we want our clients to be readily available. So like Twitter, Discord, Telegram, all these different things. We're going to be adding Slack and others. And we're extending our Chrome extension, going to be integrating with Twitter and different things. So when I talk about this, like being everywhere, adding utility, for me, the thing that's least important for most people is the thing that I prioritize. And I think that if your goal is to make a lot of money very quickly, it's a really dumb play. It's dumb to do it that way, right? However, if your goal is you're trying to add value and serve your users, I think it's the most logical thing to do, right? So it's just a question of like, how do you, as a founder, not just make that appealing to users, but how do you make that appealing to devs who are going to use your platform, investors who want to buy into your product, right? All these different, so you have to deal with the as above, so below sort of infinite regress problem of like users care about this space of things, investors care about, this space of things below what the users care about, devs care about this space of things above what the users care about. And so trying to nail each of those sort of, cohorts is difficult. But I think that because we've spent 4 years sort of building this out slowly but surely, adding value as we go, we're now at a really keen spot to take advantage of all of that infra, 30 plus microservices that we built, so that we can deliver value for each of these groups.
That's awesome. So Alec, my next question is, what do you have? Do you have an ask from the community? How can the community help you out?
I use capswan. I mean, that's it. Yeah. It's free to use. So there's no barrier, no wallet required, no coin required, but just to be upfront, because I know that most people, don't care about a product unless they're doing an airdrop or whatever. We're not doing an airdrop. So just as I don't want to set false expectations, but we are, continuing to add features. We love feedback. There's we have a demographic of users that have been just like constantly giving us feedback, and we appreciate and do pay attention to the little things. If you DM me personally, or the real giraffe is the username, then I will, we take those to heart, and we've been integrating them. So I'm really grateful for feedback, constructive feedback, criticism, any of it. We need more of that, and we will continue to need more of that as our team continues to grow and we continue to serve the users in this space. So it's not a very exciting ask, use our product, but tell us when we mess up. How about that? Maybe that's a better way to frame it.
And Twitter is the best way to reach out to you, right? Twitter DMs.
Yeah.
And you are at alechp.
Yeah, like Harry Potter or Hewlett Packard. Yeah.
I'll put it in the show notes. And it's capswan.com, right?
Yep.
Awesome.
Perfect. I have one last thing I want to ask. You're building in Web3. So obviously you're solving some interesting problems with accountability and everything, all the problems we have discussed. What's the biggest problem that you see with the blockchain and crypto today that you'd like to see addressed in the next year or like 2 years, and then short term or even long term?
This is my bias. I would love to see people focus more on building things with utility that add value to users that isn't purely a liquidity play, right? I think that there are always going to be people who push meme coins, shit coins, random projects that rug someone, make millions of dollars. I would love to see more people double down on meaningful utility, finding product market fit outside of just selling things to other crypto natives. Finding product market fit. I know Mert and other people harp on this all the time. It's difficult, right? There's a reason that most startups, they pivot so often, and there's a reason that most of them fail in the first 5 years, and the ones that don't fail in the first 10 years, right? Because it's really, really difficult to find a way to continually add value and stay afloat at the same time. So it's a big ask. It's not like a casual thing I'm suggesting, but I would love to see more people do that. And I think that from abroad, kind of zooming out, it would help people take us more seriously as an industry. We wouldn't just be scam coin central. We have this underlying decentralized banking layer, whatever that thing is, I don't know. But here's this really cool app that I love to use, right? And I think that we're kind of playing on the fringes of that, SocialFi being an example. But I do think that, what we're doing is still geared so heavily towards crypto, and for good reason, that we haven't quite broken out into the larger market. So, I think there's a lot of criticisms about blockchain in general, usually performance-based or fee-based or whatever the thing might be, decentralization, right? That there's a lot of things that crypto people love to harp about. And there's good reason for that. I'm not criticizing those criticisms in that, like, we shouldn't have those conversations. We should. But where I think we should be going as an industry is adding value to the end user. I mean, it's not complicated. Web2 figured that out. I mean, they went through their .com bubble, and then they're like, oh, wait, we have to build real things. We can't just buy a domain and sell it for $1 million. Like, that'll still happen in perpetuity, but we need something that keeps people coming back. And then we came up with this ad revenue generation machine, and all these social media platforms like tagged into that, right? And Facebook spent 4+ years building before they started focusing on revenue. So I see it as like we're in that kind of pivotal, gray area between those two phases. Like, now is our time to cross the chasm, so to speak. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And it doesn't pay as well as a rug or a scam or a Ponzi would. So, but I would say, like, I know some really sharp devs. I started this group called Gilder Hub, where people get together and share what they're building. And I'm grateful because I know that there are people in this space and in tech in general that are trying to add value that isn't just extractive. So it's definitely, the people are out there. People care about this. It's not sexy to talk about. It's sexy to show a green P&L statement saying you made $1 million. It's not sexy to say I'm building this app that's going to make your life easier. It's just not. So I hope that we can not completely get rid of, the thing that makes crypto exciting to speculate on. Obviously, that's what capswan's bread and butter is, but just move the balance back a little bit in the direction of utility. So it's not so, all or nothing for anyone getting into this space.
All right, Alec, that's an excellent take-home message to end the podcast on. Thank you so very much for coming on and talking to us, Degens. We literally learned so much. I mean, the pace of this podcast was like insane. Do you agree, Amrit? Like, I think
I agree. We had
Alec's a beast.
we had intense conversations. We had fun conversations. We had insightful conversations. So many different things. I agree.
Awesome. Well, thanks, fellas. I appreciate you having me on. If I can do anything to help share the word on the podcast, let me know.
Absolutely, man. Keep shit posting. More Naruto posts, please.
Okay, will do.
I love it.
All right.